Christina, welcome back. And I say welcome back because we've just hopped over from recording the Stepmom Diaries podcast. Thank you so much for joining me over here, too.
Thank you. Yeah, happy to be here.
Yeah. So we talk a lot on this channel to women who are interested in coaching step families in particular. And I would love to, since you are a therapist and a coach, I would love to dive in. We kind of had a little bit of this conversation on the podcast, but I'd love to dive in a little bit more into one of the things that I always talk about with the coaches I train is the difference between therapy and coaching and how careful we need to be as coaches not to kind of cross that line. Can you talk,
Mhm.
since you do both, I would
Mhm.
love for you to just talk a little bit to us about that difference and how, as a coach, you can really stay far away from that line.
Yeah, I mean for me it's not getting too into the brain, not getting too into the layers of their history of childhood or just those deeper feelings that feel like aren't necessarily goal oriented or solution focused. They're more relating to their own, I guess, anxiety, depression, things of that sort. So for me, if a stepmom is talking about the anxiety that she feels or I'll say this. Like when I'm working with couples and I can tell that a couple has like an avoidant attachment or anxiously attached or anything like that, like I might notice that. I might say, have you guys discussed this within your relationship? Are you aware of this? I might give them a few resources, but I don't stay there very long. And I just kind of get them back to, all right, let's identify maybe patterns that are probably relating to that underlying factor.
Uh-huh.
If I were doing therapy, I would stay with that a little bit more and do more of the work around it. But with coaching, it's more of like, hey, you guys should look into this
Yeah.
and then let's refocus to, actual things that you guys can try and do with each other, whether it's maybe just communication, but I'm not labeling it as, anything that would relate to childhood trauma or, things like that.
Yeah. And I know, I mean, I know we've talked about this before, like therapists out there really don't get great training around step family dynamics. So I'm sure you're like I am, where people find you and they have seen a therapist and gotten some bad advice. Like, what are some of the pieces of bad advice that you have heard from your clients that they have gotten around this?
Gosh, the ones that are like jaw dropping to me is just the real big invalidation of the stepmom experience. And even just to the point of saying, like, you don't have any right to be here because you're the step parent, whether it's like in a family therapy dynamic or it's really, the stepmom is trying to explain how she feels in her family. And I think this therapist, and it's hard to say what her intention was, but really brought it back to, well, how do you think the mom feels? Not to say
Oof.
that like, we shouldn't have compassion or have some thought or empathy into how the other parents might be feeling as well, but that's really invalidating when you
Yeah.
haven't felt validated yet. So I think really just I think it's difficult, and I'm curious if you feel the same. I feel like there's a lot of transference and countertransference and stuff in therapy anyway.
Yeah.
And I really feel like it's really difficult for some therapists who have their own blended family experience, whether they were the stepchild and they had a stepmom, or they're the mom and they can't imagine, another woman help raising their kids or
Uh-huh.
whatever. I really feel like it's difficult for some to have a client who's activating maybe some of their own insecurities or their
Yeah.
own wounds and to keep that out of the client session. It's difficult for them to have anything to give to the stepmom when they're feeling almost threatened themselves.
So I'm really glad you brought that up because I was talking about this on one of my monthly calls with my coaches inside the Coach Academy this week, actually, about that concept of countertransference. So maybe for those who are watching who are coaches, not therapists, and like have never heard that term before, maybe explain that term, but then also let's talk about it in the coaching context because a
Yeah.
lot of the women that go into coaching are coming out of crazy experiences like we've had, and they want to help other stepmoms, but it is triggering when they have a client come in and we had a conversation about like how to handle that when you have a client that comes in that is kind of triggering because of your experiences. So
Mm.
talk a little bit more about that, the concept of countertransference, but then also how it can play out in the coaching space.
Yeah. So there's transference and there's countertransference. And essentially, it's you're feeling like your own experiences are being impacted by the person you're talking with. So if you're the therapist, you're feeling like, oh, I'm being activated by what this person is sharing with me, whether
Mhm.
they're sharing childhood trauma that you can relate to, or they're sharing, their own high conflict biomom situation that you've also experienced and now you're feeling elevated, and vice versa with client versus therapist, where you're feeling, the biggest example is if you're the client and you're feeling like therapist it sorry, my cat's here. The therapist is reminding you of your mom, and it's feeling a little bit too like of a motherly role and
Um,
not really like a therapist role. So just like your previous stuff impacting your ability to effectively work with that person. So with coaching, and I will be honest, like I have to monitor my own, transference with this because it does often feel like all the X's are alike. And so you
no,
have to.
I think we all have to be, and, I mean, they talk to you when you're getting your degree about that, that like you've got to always be conscious not to engage in countertransference.
Mhm.
But it is something that we really have to be careful with when we're working in this space because
Yeah.
we
It's
we
already
are.
given that
Yeah,
we have so much in common.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and, I think when we hear, "Oh, the bio mom did that to me too," or, it's definitely this line of friendship, but also I'm your coach, but also and for me, it's also, okay, I can that's kind of the biggest thing for me in coaching versus therapy. In therapy, the professional line is way darker.
Yes.
In coaching, a lot of people know a lot about me already
Mhm.
because I'm on Instagram and because I
Yeah.
share my life. And so there's this professional line that is a little bit more blurry. And a lot of stepmoms who I enjoy are seeing me more as like a friend and, a peer, which is so much different than the professional line of therapy.
Mhm.
Um, so, but yeah, with coaching, it's being able to say, I can relate to my client. I hear and I can probably predict how she might be feeling, but also leaving so much space for them to tell you how
Right.
they're feeling and about what they know about their biomom situation or the relationship. And we can just kind of use our own experience as little indicators. And the biggest thing that we can do with that is more validation
Mhm.
than telling them, "Oh, you should be doing this because I know exactly what you've been through."
Yeah. Yeah. Or, this is how I handled it and your situation's similar, so you should handle it this way. Like,
Exactly.
no, that is not what we wanna do.
Mm-mm. No.
Oh, this is so great, and I'm gonna have to bring you back because there are so many other great conversations that we could have around this that I think that, the coaches out there would really, really benefit from with your experience. So thank you so much for
Yeah.
being here, Christina. This was so
Yeah.
fun.
Thank you. Thank you. Good luck, everyone.